Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we get started, if you want to stay ahead of the curve on what's really happening in crypto and global finance, hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe so that you don't miss what's coming next with our daily uploads. So there's a shift happening right now that most people just won't notice until it's already changed everything. And while everyone's being distracted by price charts and meme coins, something far bigger has been brewing in the shadows. And this is a technology that could rewire how money moves across the entire planet. And the banks, they've known about it for years. They just hoped that you wouldn't figure it out or notice what's really going on. So today we're talking about XRP, and not the hype, not the speculation, but the infrastructure play that could make traditional banking look like the dial-up internet of finance. Let's start with a simple question. Why does it take 3 to 5 business days to send money from the United States to Mexico? Think about that for a second. We live in a world where you can video call someone on the other side of the planet in real time, and where you can stream 4K movies instantly, and where AI can write essays in seconds. But moving $100 across a border, that'll be 3 to 5 days, $15 in fees, and a terrible exchange rate. Thank you very much. And this isn't a bug, it's a feature. The global payment system, the one that moves $6 trillion every single day, is intentionally slow, because slow means fees, and slow means intermediaries. Slow means banks stay in complete control. So here's how it actually works when you send an international payment. Your money doesn't travel directly. It bounces through multiple correspondent banks, and each one is taking a cut. Each one is adding a delay. So your $100 might touch 5 different institutions before it actually reaches its destination, and every single one of them is charging for that privilege. So this system, it's actually called correspondent banking, and it was designed in the 1970s, over 50 years ago. So we're running the world's financial infrastructure on technology older than the personal computer. The entire system is held together by something called SWIFT, a messaging network that doesn't actually move money. It just sends instructions between banks. So imagine if email didn't send your actual message, it just sent a note telling someone else to pass it along. That's SWIFT. And here's the crazy part, the banks know it's broken, and they've known this for decades, but broken systems can be profitable systems when you control them. Every inefficiency is a revenue stream. Every delay is an opportunity to charge more interest, and every conversion is a chance to skim off the top. But then something happened that the banks just did not see coming. Technology caught up, and it's brought a solution that they simply could not ignore. So in 2012, a group of developers had a radical idea. What if you could move value as fast as information? And what if you could settle a payment in 3 seconds instead of 3 days? What if you could do it for a fraction of a cent instead of $15? They built something that's called the XRP ledger, a decentralized network designed specifically for one thing, and that is moving money at the speed of the internet with no mining, no proof of work, no energy waste, just pure settlement efficiency. And here's where it gets interesting. Ripple, the company that uses XRP, didn't go to consumers. They went straight to the banks. They walked into boardrooms at some of the biggest financial institutions on earth and said, we can save you billions, and we can make your Nostro accounts obsolete. We can settle cross-border payments in real time as well. And guess what? The banks laughed at first, but then they ran the numbers, and the numbers were terrifying because XRP actually worked. Traditional correspondent banking requires banks to pre-fund accounts all over the world, trillions of dollars just sitting there locked up waiting to maybe be used for a transaction. So it's like keeping a garage full of different currencies just in case someone needs to make a payment. Massively inefficient overall. XRP flips that model, and instead of pre-funding accounts everywhere, you hold XRP, and when a payment needs to happen, you convert currency to XRP, send it across a ledger in 3 to 5 seconds, and convert it to the destination currency on the other side. So total time under 10 seconds, total cost fractions of a penny. Suddenly those billions locked up in Nostro accounts could be freed, that capital could be deployed elsewhere, and those fee structures, they'd have to change as well. So this wasn't just a new technology, it was an extinction event for an entire business model that's existed for decades. So the banks did what any threatened institution does. They ran secret tests. Santander, Standard Chartered, SBI Holdings, Bank of America, and behind closed doors, they were piloting XRP corridors, and the results kept coming back the same: faster and cheaper and better. But publicly, silence, because admitting XRP worked meant admitting their entire infrastructure was obsolete, and it meant admitting that they'd been overcharging customers for decades because they could. So it meant admitting that a handful of developers built something better than $1 trillion industry. That's when the narrative war began. If they couldn't stop the technology, they'd stop the adoption of the technology. So the playbook was simple: create fear, uncertainty, and doubt in everybody. Crypto is dangerous. XRP is unregulated, and it's used for money laundering. It's a security. It's too volatile, too risky, too new. So the message was clear: trust us, not them. And then came the lawsuit. December 2020, the SEC filed charges against Ripple, claiming that XRP was an unregistered security, and the timing was surgical, just as institutional adoption was being accelerated. And just as regulatory clarity was forming in other countries, the US regulators stepped in quickly, and exchanges delisted XRP overnight. Liquidity evaporated, and retail investors panicked. Mission accomplished for the banks. But here's what most people missed out of all this: the lawsuit was not really about XRP. It was about setting a precedent. If regulators could label XRP a security, they could do it to any crypto asset, so they could control the entire industry through fear. So Ripple could have settled quietly, and they could have paid a fine or made some changes and moved on, but they did not. They fought for over 2 years, and they battled in a court, spending over $100 million in legal fees, refusing to back down. And while the US tied itself in regulatory knots, the rest of the world was moving forward. Japan granted XRP full regulatory approval. Singapore welcomed Ripple with open arms. The UAE, Switzerland, and the UK all creating clear frameworks for digital assets. Even the IMF and World Bank started exploring blockchain-based payment rails. The US was not leading innovation, it was isolating itself. And then came July 2023. Judge Annalisa Torres ruled that XRP is not a security when sold on public exchanges. So the decision sent shockwaves through the industry, and within hours, exchanges began relisting. The prices surged, and the narrative flipped once again. XRP was not the villain this time, it was the victim of regulatory overreach, and now it was vindicated. But here's what nobody's talking about. So while everyone was focused on the lawsuit, the real revolution was happening quietly in the background. Central banks started paying attention, not to Bitcoin as digital gold, and not to Ethereum as a smart contract platform, but to XRP as payment infrastructure. So the Bank of England explored RTGS integration with distributed ledgers. the Monetary Authority of Singapore ran cross-border CBDC pilots. Bhutan built an entire CBDC system on the XRP ledgers. So these weren't experiments, they were proof of concepts for the future of money overall. Because here's the reality, the world is moving toward tokenization. Real estate, stocks, bonds, commodities, everything will eventually exist as digital tokens on blockchains, and those tokens need to move between jurisdictions, between currencies, and between systems, so they need a bridge. And guess what? XRP is that bridge. It's not trying to replace the dollar or become a store of value. It's designed to become the neutral settlement layer between all forms of value. The internet did not replace phones or mail or television. It became the infrastructure that connected everything, and that's the XRP thesis, and the numbers back it up. Ripple now has over 350 financial institutions using its technology. RippleNet processes billions in transaction volume, and on-demand liquidity corridors using XRP, they're cutting settlement times from days to seconds and reducing costs by up to 90%. So this isn't theory anymore, it's happening in the Philippines, in Mexico, in Southeast Asia. People are sending money home using XRP rails without even knowing it. So the technology is invisible, but the impact is huge. So where does this go? The financial system is at an inflection point. The old rails are cracking under the weight of global demand. Inflation is eroding trust in fiat currencies. Governments are exploring digital alternatives, and private companies are building the infrastructure faster than regulators can even keep up. So XRP sits at the center of all of this transformation, not as a revolution against banks, but as the evolution of banking itself. The institutions that adapt will survive, and the ones that resist will become irrelevant. So we're watching the early stages of a transition that will take decades to fully play out. From analog finance to digital liquidity, from closed systems to open networks, from centralized control to distributed infrastructure. And here's the thing, most people just won't see it happening until it's already over. They'll just wake up one day and realize that money moves differently, and that payments settle instantly, and that borders don't matter anymore. And they'll wonder, when did it all change? And the answer is right now. It's changing right now in front of our eyes, and we can see it happening. If this perspective shifts how you see XRP, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe so you're here for what comes next with XRP in the crypto space. The future of finance is not being decided in headlines. It's being built in code, tested in corridors, and deployed across borders while most people aren't paying attention at all. Thanks for watching.